Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to understand IBDP ESS topic 2.5, zonation, succession and change in ecosystem. We are going to cover both SL and HL content. So let's get started. So first and foremost, we need to understand is about the terminologies, that is zonation and succession. And as far as your IB exams are concerned, these concepts are important because I have seen questions coming from this topic in past papers. So let's understand this. So first concept is zonation. So zonation, the name itself says something related to zones. So what is this zone? So zone, it refers to the change in community over an environmental gradient. Okay, and when I say community, in previous subtopic we have understood what exactly a community is. It is the population of different species living at one place at a time. So that is a community. And when it differs, so if you have uh, seen a mountain, okay, then you must see a zonation in this region. Why? Because in the top region of the mountain, there you will find different types of an organism, but if you will see the bottom area, there you will find a different varieties of plants and animals. So why it is like that? It is because that different community is adapted to a different abiotic conditions. In top region you have snow, you have ice zone because the temperature is also very low, and there is a presence of glaciers and rocks, so you will not find tall trees or different vegetation. Okay, you will find organisms like lichens or mosses, which are of primitive type of plants, we can say, which has the capacity to survive this condition. In the bottom region, or you can say the foothills of mountains, where the height is less, you will find oaks, rabbits, grasslands. You will also find human structures because that is where we are also adapted to live. In the upper region, if you see 500 to 1500-meter, you will find deciduous forest zone, where you will find certain animals like fox and deer because they are that organisms which can tolerate 15 degrees Celsius to 20 degrees Celsius temperature. Above, as you go from foothills to deciduous to mountain forest zone, the temperature is decreasing gradually, and again a different varieties of plants and animals you will see, like pine, spruce and Douglas fir. So different varieties of biodiversity you can see. Similarly, if you are going further upside, then again there is this low temperature, a very low temperature, and then you can see the pine zone and the tundra zone, where again you will see certain types of an animals like spruce and bedberries and firs and this sexy frage and marmot and ibex and certain kind of an organisms. Now it's not like that the zonation is always in the mountain region. You can also find a zonation or this kind of pattern in ocean, because in ocean also there are different abiotic conditions. If you see the spray zone or the littoral zone, there you will see different organisms. When you see high intertidal zone, again there is this very high tide region, so certain animals like barnacles or limpets, there you will find found them. In the middle intertidal zone you will find certain varieties of plants and again like few barnacles and sea anemones. In low intertidal zone you will see lobsters and algae and crabs and everything. And in subtidal zone you will find a kelp forest and certain fish, sea cucumber and corals. So it is an observable changes in species composition as you move across an area where one or more environmental factors change gradually. And this distinct patterns or distinct band is known as zones, which reflects the tolerance limit of different species. So that are the examples of zonation. And the gradient can be because of any of these abiotic factor. It can be due to a tidal level, it can be because of altitude, it can be distance from shore or a soil moisture. So in exam, if they are asking you to describe zonation, always name the environmental gradient and the specific community which changes you observe along it. So that's about the zonation. Now, transects. Now, what are transects? So, it can be used to measure the biotic and abiotic factors along an environmental gradient. Okay. Now, if you want to measure something like how many biotic or abiotic organisms or factors are there, then how you do it, right? So, there are these certain methods which we have. The very common method is transect. There are two types of transect: line transect and belt transect. What it will measure? So it will measure the species identity, its abundance, how much the percentage cover is there, and what that their population density. And in abiotic factors, it can measure temperature, light intensity, soil texture, pH, salinity, wind speed. So that kind of an abiotic factors you can measure uh, at each sampling point along the transect. So line transect is just like a single line, and belt is a 1 meter wide area which you are marking on either side of the line, where where you are actually recording all the organisms. So line transect is used when you want a quick survey, or when you just want to see whether a species is present or absent, and when you want a quantitative data or the abundance or the percentage cover along a gradient, then you use a belt transect method. Now, kite diagram is also a method. A kite, so the width of the kite, so just imagine the shape of the kite, and the width of each kite represents the abundance or percentage cover at each distance. So multiple species can be stocked to show how communities changes. So species A widens near the water edge, species B peaks mid-shore, and species C dominates the upper shore, visually showing the zonation. Now, what is succession? So, succession is the replacement of one community by another in an area over a time due to changes in biotic and abiotic factor. Now, just remember this point, that when we were studying zonation, it was not like that the community is changing over time. Okay, in zonation we were just focusing on one particular time. At the same time, you are able to see different zones or different types of an organism. In succession, that is not the case. In succession, there is a change in community, but that is changing over time due to changes in biotic and abiotic variable. So succession is a directional, non-seasonal, cumulative change in the species occupying an area, and it begins when disturbance removes vegetation and ends when a stable climax community is reached. So you can see different types of succession happening in different area. Like you can see it in freshwater to forest, you can see sand use stabilizing, but you don't have to go into this much types. You just have to understand the exactly how the succession happens. So the key features of succession is that it is directional, it follows a predictable sequence of community types, and it is driven by organisms. So each organism, you know, um, is, allowing the other organism to occupy the place. Okay, so each community will modify an environment in such a way that that is making it suitable for the next, and that's why the community changes over time. And at the end, there is this climax community where the species composition stabilizes and there won't be any further directional change. So, succession involves the entire community, not just plants. So, that's also something which you need to clear it out. That changes in plant species drives changes in herbivores, which in turn influences which predators are present. So, the whole trophic level gets changed or gets modified. Now, what are the different stages of succession? So, it starts with the pioneer community. Now, pioneer community is that species which are, suitable to survive in that extreme condition, and there is no soil at that time, right? So, pioneer species are generally occupied by lichens, mosses. So, what this organism will do, they'll break the rocks and they will add organic matter, and that's how the soil will start to form. So, this is a type of a primary succession also where there is no soil formation, and a very first time the soil starts to form, right? So nowadays you won't be able to see primary succession more. It's like primary succession has already happened in the history, and most of the time nowadays we see is secondary succession. That also we will understand that how secondary succession occurs, but in primary succession the soil is also not there. Then gradually grasses, herbaceous plants starts to stabilize the soil, and it will increase the organic content. And after that the shrubs, small trees will create a new environment, new microclimate, and it will improve the soil structure because their roots gets deeper. And then we have the fast growing trees. So, canopy reduces light at ground level and a thick humus layer develops. And then slow growing shade tolerant trees starts to occupy the place, which are self sustaining, efficient nutrient cycling, and it is highly stable community. So, that's how a pioneer community, which is followed by early sterile community, then an intermediate sterile community, and then a late sterile community will then form, then last a climax community will form. So that's what I was discussing, that primary succession happens on a newly formed substratum where there is no soil or a pre-existing community such as rock. So it is generally, you will see when there is rock, how rock formed when a volcanism is happening. Okay, so that's how the primary succession happens. So it takes hundreds to thousands of years to go from bare rock to a climax community. So it's not a like a one day process. It takes a lot many years to go from a bare rock to the climax community. So pioneer stage are the first to colonize the area, so that there they will start to break the rock and it will die and then decompose, and then organic matter gets accumulated, and then this thin soil is formed which is enough for a grass to germinate, and then the succession will proceed. So this is the real life example where the primary succession has happened in Iceland, in Surtsey Island, where the volcanic island emerges from the ocean. It was just a bare lava rock, no soil, no life, in the year of 1963. But today we have a 60 plus plant species, self sustaining ecosystem still progressing towards climax. Now coming to the secondary succession, where it happens on a bare soil where there has been a pre existing community, such as field where agriculture has ceased, or a forest after an intense firestorm. So now secondary succession is happening where the soil is still there, right? And there is this whole climax community stage established, but after that, maybe there's some kind of an accident or calamity, such as forest fire, which is happening, right? So after the forest fire, the soil is still there, but there is no community, right? So then at that place, the secondary succession will start to happen. So again, in secondary succession, also the starting point is a bare, like a soil which is already there. So that's a difference. That in primary succession there is this bare rock, but in secondary succession the soil is already present. Otherwise, the growing stages, like the species, is almost same. So soil formation here, it needs to be created from scratch, but the soil is already there. So there is this seed bank which is already exist. The speed is slow, but here it is faster because soil is already there, right? So you don't need that much years. Pioneer species is lichens and mosses, but here they are little bit higher, like grasses or fast growing herbs and weeds. Example is volcanic island, and in secondary succession it's because of the abandoned farmland or post fire forest. This is an example of secondary succession which happened in 2016 in Canada. McMurray wildfire, which has caused this much hectares of boreal forest loss, and 90,000 people were evacuated. And the pioneer stage looks like fireweed, grasses, pine seedlings were colonized within a 1 year, and gradually the shrubs and herbs will start to occupy the place. So it was around 60 to 80 years it took to recover it completely. So why faster than primary? Because soil and seed bank and root system survived the fire, and that's why the ecosystem had a head start. So these are the changes which happens during succession. So in early succession, there are few trophic levels, there are few biodiversity, there is no like a poor structure soil or no soil as such, or a very nutrient recycling is also very simple and rapid because few species are involved, and that's why the NPP is high. So the primary productivity is higher because of the rapid pioneer growth, but the secondary productivity is low. In mid succession, things are getting changed. More and more biodiversity is added up. There are more complex food webs, and the NPP is also stabilized, and the species diversity is also increasing, and deepening and it will improve the structures. While in climax community, the energy is complex, the biodiversity is higher, the humus starts to develop, it's very rich in climax community, it's highly efficient, and the GPP is also high. So ecosystem resilience is the capacity to bounce back. Okay, how much capacity is there with ecosystem to bounce back in when you have certain disturbances in an ecosystem. So resilience is the ability of an ecosystem to absorb disturbances and recover to its original state. So resistance is withstanding disturbance without change, and resilience is recovering after change. So, how diversity drives resilience? So, multiple species perform the same role when you have higher biodiversity. So, if one is lost, the other can compensate. And different species respond differently to the same disturbance, so the overall impact is dampened. Diverse species use resources in different ways. So, more complex resource use is more greater productivity and stability. Right? These are the factors which influences the community development. So climatic factors like temperature and precipitation determines the potential climax community. Example, same latitude, same climate, and same climax community. So similar climax community, right? So these are the different factors which influence the succession, like soil pH, depth, nutrient content, drainage effect, which species establish. Chalk grassland is not equal to acidic heathland even in same climate, right? Geomorphology like slope, drainage pattern can affect the soil formation, sunlight, and water availability, because the steep slope will result into a thin soil and that leads to a slower succession, and south facing slopes gets more sun and that's why different vegetation, so that also matters. Disturbance events reset succession or alters its trajectory, like regular wildfires maintain grasslands. Drought can shift. Similarly, top down influences like consumers at higher trophic levels shape plant community. So, if you have herbivore grazing, like prevents tree establishment, right? So, if there are more herbivores, they'll eat more plants, and that can prevent tree establishment. So, predator removal, herbivore explosion, and that can also result in overgrazing. So, that also matters. Example is wolves in Yellowstone. So, in 1926 to 1995, wolves were removed, and because of that, the elk population exploded. Overgrazed willow and aspen along rivers, the habitat got degraded, and a fewer songbirds, beavers, and fish were then present. But after reintroduction, wolves reduced elk population, the vegetation was recovered, and then the river bank got stabilized. And this is how, the organisms were able to, the wolf population were able to control the biodiversity. So this is a tropic cascade. So top predator influences the entire food web, and it shapes the plant community and even the physical landscape. Now pattern of GPP and NPP throughout the succession. So in Pioneer we have high NPP because there are fewer producers, so there is a low photosynthesis, and that's why there is this very little biomass to respire. That's why the NPP is high. But in intermediate it is rising because you have more plants, so that's why more photosynthesis, and that's why there is more biomass which will do more respiration, and that's why it's um the GPP and respiration is rising, and NPP is declining. In climax community is almost zero because there is very large biomass and massive respiration, and nearly all energy fixed is consumed, and that's why there is this dynamic equilibrium. Now, very interesting and very easy, what is the difference between R strategist species and K strategist species? So now there is this classification which is done based on the reproductive strategies that who are better to adapted to pioneer and climax community. Okay, so depending upon that, so our strategist species are something which has the capacity to tolerate extreme conditions, and they are the one which occupy the environment for the first time, so they are basically a pioneer species. So all pioneer species are strategist species. They have a shorter lifespan, rapid growth and early maturity, many offsprings, little parental care, and their niche are also very general, and they are regulated by external factors like weather. So all the examples like bacteria, insects, dandelions, flowers, fireweed, all are our strategist species. They are also called as opportunist because they are adapted to unstable, unpredictable environment. On the other hand, we have K strategist species, which are also called as competitors because they are adapted to stable, predictable environment. They have a longer lifespan, slow growth, large offsprings, high parental care. Their niche are also very specialized, and they are regulated by internal factors, and their role is uh, mostly in climax community. Examples are elephants, whales, oak trees, and humans. So in at early stages you will find R strategists, in mid you will find both R and K, and in climax community you will find mostly K strategist species. Okay. Now challenging the climax community. Now here there is no single predetermined climax for any given set of climate conditions. Multiple stable communities can exist under similar environmental conditions. Different successional paths may arise from different starting point. So this is how it is, there is so much uncertainty which is there over what ecosystem would develop naturally when were there where there is no human influences. There is this hypothesis which is made, which proposed that the post ice age Europe was not covered by dense closed canopy forest as traditionally assumed. Instead, the landscape was a mosaic of open grasslands, scattered trees, and wooded pastures. Large herbivore maintain open areas through gazing and browsing. This challenged the assumption that without humans, Europe would be entirely forested. Implication for rewilding, restoring large herbivores may create more diverse and open landscape. So this just you don't need to take a side, but you should be able to explain why the single climax model is an oversimplification, because you need a different perspective to understand a particular concept. Now, human activity can divert and change the progression of succession, leading to a plagioclimax. Okay, several human activities like grazing, which can prevent the shrubs or trees establishment, and that can hamper the succession. Burning, like if you regularly cut or remove the woody species, then the succession will be hampered, and most of the time the early settle stage is maintained. When you do agriculture, like different activities like plowing, planting, harvesting, that keep land in the perpetual early succession only. Deforestation again forces regression to earlier settle stages. Urban development will permanent replace the natural habitat, like when we are doing cities and infrastructure development. And when you are removing a top predators, herbivores gets exploited and overgrazing will happen, and it will prevent the forest regeneration. So human activities uh, is because of that the plagioclimax community in succession is developed. So if human activity stops, succession resumes towards climax. But if the ecosystem resilience has been exceeded, it may never recover to its original state and an alternative stable state is achieved. So in exam, they may ask you to connect these concepts with resilience or with 1.3 sustainability, and you should be able to describe each factors. These are the essential vocabularies which you have to use over the chapter, and whenever the answer comes, try to use the same words, because subject specific terminologies are important in ESS. They will not give marks to the vague responses. If you have written your answer specifically, then only you will get the marks. Thank you. In next class we will study the next subtopic.